Hey there, this review for Cast of Crusades, session 58. I think I had 4 players this time. No, 1, 2, 3, 4. I actually had 5 players for this session. We had a little, some people away on vacation and stuff. But so we had Lork, Cosmo, Sprawl, Renee, which is a new character from my friend Steve. He got introduced in the last session, and another new character for my buddy Thad. We'll get to him in a bit. We couldn't bring in Artemis, which is Thad's current character, because geographically it just doesn't work. Like, he's still, he didn't come with the party, so Thad made up this new character, which, like I said, we'll introduce him in a little bit. We started off with a recap, like we typically do, and then they're in the deep gnome city of Binding Rock. And Oslin, their deep gnome companion and guide who is from there, is leading them into the city. They're drawing quite the crowd, as I explained to the players, that it is almost unheard of for non-deep gnomes to come here. Like, the deep gnomes are very isolationist. They're in a land that is almost entirely hostile to them. Their home is a secret location. So they're not, the people that live there, the gnomes that live there, are not used to seeing even dwarves or half orc, like anything like that. So it's they're drawing quite the crowd. As they're moving through the city, they're eventually stopped by this one deep gnome that I described him. He's like, all the deep gnomes are like wiry little muscles. But this guy is actually like jacked. Like, he's almost nearly the size of a dwarf. Like, he's just big. And he's in charge of the defenses for Binding Rock. So he stops Oslin and starts to question him. And one of the issues he has, beyond him bringing strangers in, and this guy's name is Signar Stonebreaker, he has an issue with them because some of the party members are wearing the drow, like, cloaks and stuff that they took from the drow that they beat. And they all have this house symbol on them from House Quavala. And House Quavala, they learn, has a foothold in the fungal forest. And they're slavers. So definitely not somebody, drow in general wouldn't be welcome here, and people wearing their symbols are very suspicious. They're very suspicious of them. So he questions them a bit, and Oslin explains to him that, this is why they did it. We did this, and the way I described the scene to the players was, if you've seen the Peter Jackson's Fellowship of the Ring movie, it's basically like Aragorn trying to negotiate his way into Lothlorn with Haldir, and which didn't happen that way in the book, but we won't get into that. I love that movie; it's my favorite movie. Eventually, they send Signar Stonebreaker sends a runner to the elders, the gnome elders, and eventually the party is granted permission to enter the city, and they're taken to what is basically the gnome city's Capitol building, religious site. They're taken there and put up in like a waiting area. They're made comfortable. They're not treated as prisoners or anything. Oslin stays with them, and they wait for to meet with the elders. They're going to be given a council with the elders. And this building is called Sham Salafar. So they wait there, and eventually they meet with the elders, and they're brought into this circular chamber, and the gnomes all sit up on these raised daises, which are raised to most of the party, because the bulk of the party at this time, with the players present, are dwarves. I mean, they have Barry's Barry wasn't there. My friend Dave wasn't at the session, so Barry just kind of faded to the back. But Lork is like 6'6", so they're not really raised above him. But anyway, one of the things that they note about these deep gnomes, these elders, is they're really, really old. And that's not their, that would be a noticeable feature, but it's not their noticeable feature. Their most notable feature is each one of them has taken on some aspect of stonework or gem physically. And the way this was explained to the players and their characters through roleplay with Oslin is that these elders, like their collective knowledge, they're so old is like thousands of years. Deep gnomes in my setting are very, very long lived. I think they are in regular, like Forgotten Realms D&D too, but in my setting, they live a very long time. And some of them, these elders specifically, become so attuned to working stone and gems and stuff like that, that they can actually start to take on aspects of these materials. So one of the council members, it's a female gnome. She has like rubies for eyes, and there's another one that has quartz for his hands. Have like basically turned to quartz, and they're fully functional. All their, like the woman with the deep gnome with the ruby eyes, her eyes work. They have taken on the aspects of being rubies. Along with this other gentleman, has quartz for fists. And there's another one, her skin has basically turned to emerald. And then there's another one that has all the deep gnomes classically have big bulbous noses. If you look at the art, and you can track it down in the old Fiend Folio where the deep gnome was put out in AD&D, they look like that in my setting. They have big bulbous noses. Well, this last one of the council also has a very pronounced jaw, and that jaw is made of jade. It looks like it's made out of jade. So they ask who speaks for them, who leads them, and probably typically, I think if Dave had been there, Barry would have stepped up, but he's not, so he obviously didn't. So I think Sprawl was kind of getting ready to do it, and then I think Lork stepped forward, and Sprawl was relieved that he did, which made it very interesting, because Lork is the most charismatic member of the party. But what did happen was Oslin, before they spoke with the party, they asked Oslin what happened to him, because he's been gone for a while. He related his tale of, being out, getting captured by the dwarves, and then ultimately freed by the player, some of the player characters present, Lork and Barry, and then brought to the surface, and where he spent over a year's time in helping the dwarves there with their minds. And so this wins a lot of sway with the Elder Council. And Lork tells them that they're here. They've come seeking a piece to the rod of 7 parts. I don't know if he gets that specific, but he tells them that he's looking for magic, and that they're trying to go to the Sunless Sea because they have information that the piece is there. So the deep gnome, the one with the ruby eyes, she basically is the primary communicator, and she tells them they've heard of a deep one in the Sunless Sea that possesses great magics, and that is possibly where they need to look. And the deep ones live in a place called the City of the Glass Pool, and within the Sunless Sea. So then that kind of set the party back once they realized, oh, we may have to go like underwater to get this. So they're not sure if they have to, but they want to be prepared for it. They also ask, Lork, I think, also asked about what other threats might they face. And they're told that area is inhabited by also Darrow and aboleths, which none of the characters know what a Darrow is or an aboleth is, but the players do. Actually, I think there was some confusion on Darrow. They weren't quite sure what Darrow were, which is fine. But they all, like, aboleth meant something, and they were like, oh boy, because they can be fairly powerful and dangerous. So they weren't too keen on that, but it happens. They asked for assistance, which is granted. So the council is going to provide them with whatever gear that they need, provide them with a place to rest and heal, which Barry is still, they're banged up still from fighting, and Barry is still suffering from constitution drain from battling the Wraith in the ruined Durga Tower. So they're offered to, this binding rock is offered to them as a safe haven, which they gladly accept because they haven't really felt safe since they entered the Underdark. Excuse me. They, I think they're pretty much concluded there. They're returned not to like a different suite where they actually have rooms and made very comfortable food and refreshment are brought to them. They're brought to the House of the Healing. It's called Demnar, where their wounds are tended. And then the Deep Gnome of the Ruby Eye, she actually oversees all that. Her name's Yathari Ruby Eye. And she oversees the House of the Healing. And she tends to helps tend to their wounds and restores Barry's to his full constitution. They spend about a week's time in Binding Rock, resting. Sprawl's preparing, potions, his brews. They're given some potions to help with water breathing. And Sprawl, I think, actually made some too from a different spell that is available to him. So in that time, they're greeted or met with a deep gnome that comes to their suite named Lepnig. And Lepnig is a monk, and he's played by my friend Thad. And he's a young monk. And part of their order is that they have to go out and seek new experiences because most of the deep gnomes never leave Binding Rock. There's only a select few that leave Binding Rock to either forage in the fungal forest or scout or whatever. That was what Oslin did as a job. So it's his turn as a member of this order to leave. So he talks to the party. They readily accept his help. They actually try to, Oslin offers to lead them, continue to guide them, because he's been near or to the Sunless Sea once in his youth. So the party actually initially tries to turn him down because they, hey, you don't owe us anything. Like, he's like, hey, I have a debt to you people, you rescued me, and they're like, no, you don't. You got us here. You fulfilled your debt. You don't have to come with us. But he willingly wants to come with them, so the party accepts his aid, and they accept the help of Lepnig, which made it super easy to integrate that into the campaign, into the adventure. So they make their preparations, and then they leave. Like I said, they spend about a week in Binding Rock. They leave, same format. Oh, back that up a little bit because there was something important that happened. While they're resting and preparing to depart, there's a really cool moment where Cosmo goes and visits Lork in his room privately. And he goes and starts, he asks Lork about his experience dying and what happened. And Lork tells him, he's met the two Raven sisters, and they asked him if he wanted to continue, meaning come back, and he said yes, and he did. And Cosmo said, well, did you have to make like a bargain or anything? And he was like, no, they just asked me, and I was willing to come back. And when I came back, I had the Raven tattoos on my forearm, which he doesn't know what they do or what they represent. So Cosmo goes on to explain about his experience and about the ambassador, and he asked if he saw people, and he's like, yeah, I saw my brother. Cosmo talks about seeing his brother when he met with the ambassador when he died, and he doesn't disclose that he made a bargain, though. He asked Lork, I'm pretty sure, if Lork made a bargain. Lork was like, no. But he talks to him about that, and this was a really cool role-playing moment between my son and my buddy Chris, and their characters Lork and Cosmo. It was really good, and probably my favorite part of the session. Cosmo never quite gets to the point where he admits that he made a bargain with the ambassador, but he does talk about the ambassador. And then he leaves, and with the kind of like questions of like, well, what does it matter? There's also an interesting reveal in that conversation is that because they're talking about the gods and what did they do for them and stuff, and Lord talks about because he worshipped like some Norse gods from his upbringing from his mentor, who was also a follower of like Norse type gods, and Lorcas kind of renounced that because he didn't feel like that God was part of any like him, part of him coming back or anything. He thinks it's these two women, the Raven sisters, I call them. So that was interesting. Nobody at the table, I didn't know he'd done that either. And my son and I talked about his character quite a bit between games, and I didn't know he'd done that either. So it was a really good encounter, role play encounter between the two of them. Like I said, it was probably my favorite part of the session. They end up leaving Binding Rock, and they're only maybe 2 hours from Binding Rock, and they hear the sounds of pitched battle ahead. And so they scout ahead, and what the scouts see, which is Cosmo, Lork, and Oslin, is they see a large group of Quaggoth, which are furry, feral humanoids that dwell in the Underdark. They're tribal, fighting bugbears and drow. And what they come to realize is that the bugbears and drow that they are fighting are the same ones that the party fought. And they're all undead. So they watch this for a while, and there's some debate about whether they should, join in. And they explained the numbers, and they got more specific with their questions. And there was twice as many Quaggoth as there was bugbear and drow. So they were like, nope, we want no part of this. And they skirted around it, which was the right decision. But they are left with the mystery of like, well, how did those bugbear and drow come back? And they're in horrible shape because Lork had beheaded the drow and cleaved one almost in two. And they have some questions, so that have not been answered yet. They continue on until eventually they enter a tunnel system. And Oslin leads them into this tunnel system. They end up spending the night there. They find a cave with some good checks. They have an uneventful night. I roll for random encounters and nothing happened. One of the other interesting roleplay things that has happened in the game is Renee, my buddy Steve's new character, is a dwarven fighter, and he's very, very French. And Steve uses like this French accent, which is infectious a bit in the table, but mostly with my friend Matt. And so Matt in character with Sprawl, because of Renee's accent, acts as a translator. Like he feels like because his accent's so heavy that he needs a translator. So through most of the game, like Steve would say something in character and Sprawl would like translate it to the rest of the party. So that was, I found that amusing, and I think the others did too. It's interesting to see those two characters interact. But one of the things with Renee is his secondary skill, for lack of a better word, or profession, I should say is a better word, is he's a chef. Like he cooks. So he cooks up this meal, and it's made camping a little bit more interesting because we're going to incorporate some rules and stuff for that. But he cooks up this recipe, and this was all on Steve. He just, I told him just, describe what you make. And so he makes like this, I don't know what he called it, but it was like this like slightly spicy meatball thing. And he tells the party as they're eating it that it's called goblin balls or something like that. And he calls it goblin balls, which Sprawl spits out about a half dozen of them at once because he thinks for a moment that he made them out of goblin balls. And it just, it was fun. And it was a good way to pass the camp. They leave the next day. Oslin gets them up early, and they're off. And they eventually come to the tunnel they're in splits and goes into three different tunnels. And they decide to take the tunnel on the right. And the way I had set this up was, above board, was each tunnel had a different encounter in it. So it was completely random. It was up to them which tunnel they took. They took the tunnel on the right. That eventually leads into a much smaller but similar mushroom-filled cavern, and when they enter that cavern, they're actually approached by a myconoid, which is a mushroom person, if you're not, a creature, if you're not familiar, and it hits them with these spores, and it establishes like telepathic link with them, so they can communicate, because the mushroom people don't talk. And it basically questions why they're there, and they tell them, "Hey, we're just passing through. We don't mean your people any harm." And they're questioning one of the things that they're asked is, who sent you? Did the Mushroom King send you? And they're like, "Nope, we have basically no idea who that is." So they're able to negotiate with the myconoid, and while they're talking, more of them appear. Like, this cavern's filled with like big, various size mushrooms, and like a bunch of other ones like come out. Like, they're totally indistinguishable until they move, and then they move up on the party and enclose. So the party's like, "This is not good." And I think the players were familiar with what Mike was. I don't think they were familiar with their abilities, so they're kind of on edge about that, like not sure what was going to happen or what they could do. And they can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But they choose to negotiate. Like, they just don't want to attack these people, and they're granted permission to travel through their cavern, but they're told not to return. Do not come back. They do not want any contact with outsiders. And the party agrees. They're like, okay. So they go. They pass through the cavern unharmed. They have to negotiate like a terrain obstacle where the tunnel they're in drops not 100% vertical, but pretty close. But they negotiate that easily enough and continue on. One of the things I had been telling them was that they've been getting going deeper as they went. The dwarves recognize that, and sort of the deep gnomes. And once they pass this this vertical drop that they go, or this near vertical drop, they also notice that it's getting warmer, and the deep gnomes and the dwarves every so often feel like this slight vibration, which reminds some of them of the purple worm encounter that they had earlier, but not nearly as violent. So it's they don't believe it's that. Eventually, the scouts see a light up ahead, like where the tunnel ends, and there's like some light, and they end up coming up to scout, and they come up to this, what you see here on the screen, this terrain build. So they see a long stone bridge over a magma flow, and on the far side they see a set of very large iron doors set into the cavern wall. And then shortly thereafter, walking around the corner, which isn't built, but as I described it, they are two fire giants, and one of the fire giants has two trolls on chain leashes held in his hand, and they walk around. So this is the party's first encounter with fire giants. There's been some throughout the campaign. There's been a desire to do something with giants from both the players and me. And Lork is actually kind of set up to fight giants. Giants are his ranger preferred enemy. He has a giant bane sword that he got many sessions ago. And so the party, they come up with a quick plan. They come out into this area over here, the smaller area. Some of them hiding behind the stone columns, and the smaller party members, like even behind the bridge abutments there. And others come right up the middle because, well, they actually can be quiet because the dwarves are wearing the dwarven footwear that makes them silent. But like Cosmo, I'm pretty sure has a drow cloak, and combined with his regular rogue abilities, he's nigh impossible to spot. He was rolling, I think he rolled like a 30 something on a hide check or stealth check or something. He rolled really well, so practically invisible. But others come out, and Sprawl shouts across the chasm to the fire giants, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was insulting. And that drew the fire giant's attention. And the one with the trolls releases his leashes, and the trolls charge across the bridge at the party. The party kind of lies in wait and ambush for them. That was what I think they're kind of hoping that would happen. They wanted to draw them one at a time. What they forgot about was that giants throw rocks. So the two trolls charge across, and the fire giants start chucking rocks at the party, and they're somewhat successful. Excuse me. What I had forgotten about was dwarves and gnomes get a great armor boost against giants. So like Sprawl already has like the best armor class in the party. It's like a 20 something. And then he got an additional, I think it's like +4. He may, and also cast some spells. I don't remember if he did that or not. But like they were actually pretty tough to hit. I did clip a few with rocks. I don't know I think the trolls did a little bit of damage to get in, but I didn't. Typical of me, I rolled horribly. So I got 120 in the entire combat, and then when I went to confirm it, it was no critical and it was regular damage. So disappointing. But I digress. They make pretty short work of the trolls. They were smart, and when the first one dropped, Lork used his action to drag it because he's strong enough, because he has a belt of giant strength. He drags it over and throws it into the magma flow, because he knows they've fought trolls before and they know they generally regenerate. I used these guys here. I haven't used these in a great number of years. See if I can get them on camera for you. Not very well, apparently. This is a Privateer Press troll. I used them, so they he throws it into the magma. Party ends up dropping the other troll, and Cosmo and Lepnig try to do the same thing. They're not quite as successful, but eventually it happens. Meanwhile, they're getting rocks chucked at them. Once the trolls are defeated, the party, for the most part, is like, we need to get across the bridge. Excuse me. So they start charging across the bridge, and not all of them. Cosmo held back and was shooting arrows, but the giants are heavily armored. Fire giants wear really well made, heavy armor, and I was describing his arrows as hitting them, but just shattering as they're charging across. The fire giants continue to throw rocks. And I know in the troll battle, Cosmo got hit a couple times with rock. Lepnig, who's a monk, he would have been hit several times, but the monk has a deflect missile ability, and he was successful on every one of those checks and was able to deflect these huge boulders that were coming in, kind of more redirect than deflect. Like he would just kind of move them ever so slightly away from him, but it saved him from taking quite a bit of damage. So as they're charging across, the giants are still chucking rocks. They hit Renee on the way over. Renee and Sprawl, I'm pretty sure, were in the lead. Matter of fact, they were, and they're in the lead. Renee gets hit and takes damage, and I have Steve who make a dexterity saving throw, because the force of the rock might knock him off the bridge. And he just barely makes his save. I didn't make the challenge level super high, but he's also a dwarven fighter, so dex is not his thing. And they described it as he starts to like teeter on the edge of the bridge, like spin off the edge of the bridge from the force of the rock hit. And Matt said that, like Sprawl reaches out and grabs him by the beard and pulls him back on, which was, I thought, great. And they continue on. Lork and Oslin are, and I think Lepnig was in there too, because he has a short bow, but I don't remember if he charged across. He did charge across, and are pulling up the rear, coming across the bridge. But it takes them a couple turns to get across. And as that's happening, they keep throwing rocks, and Oslin is hit with a rock and takes damage. I roll a dexterity saving throw for Oslin. He's a ranger. He actually has dex as a prime, and I continue to roll horribly. And Oslin goes into the magma flow. Sprawl and Renee have no idea this happened. They charge in. Lort turns, he's right next to Oslin. He sees it happen. He can't do anything to stop it. He turns, pulling, his rope from his belt because he's thinking he'll throw some rope down to him. And we kind of scrambled. I couldn't find lava or magma damage rules in the book, so we kind of Googled it, and I came up with, it should be a lot, right? So we rolled a lot of dice, and there was no way Oslin survived. So Lort turns and basically just sees Oslin's hand up out of the magma before it's incinerated. It's the last remaining piece of him, and he's gone. And Lort, full anger, charges in and confronts one of the fire giants, and the battle's on. They do a pretty good job with the giants. Lort, like I said earlier, is set up to fight giants. And they get through them pretty quick. I don't even know if I did get a hit in or two. Maybe on Renee. I don't remember. I don't remember the blow by blow too much unless it really stands out. But I know Lepnig was trying to do the stunning fist a few times and wasn't successful. He did get hits in. He was given a set of magical gauntlets that by his mentor at the monastery, and they basically give him a bonus to hit, and actually one time a day he can cast haste on himself. So they end up eventually defeating these two fire giants. They find some treasure. They're not a lot. I mean, it was actually worth a lot, but it wasn't a lot of items. They're both the giants were wearing like ceremonial belts and bracelets, and they take those, and I don't know where they're putting them because they're giant size, but we'll figure that out the next session, because this is where we pretty much ended the session. When the giants fall, like Lort is on top, he drops one of them, goes to the next one, and when it's done, he just starts like hacking away at this thing in anger that Oslin's dead, and good, being good role players, Renee and Sprawl or Matt and Steve are like, like, what happened? Where's Oslin? Like, what happened? And because they never saw this happen, it happened behind them. So they're all pretty struck by the death of Oslin. What I didn't get or realize until this happened was there was actual connection with the players with Oslin. My son especially expressed that he was really bummed that happened because he really liked that NPC. I liked him too. I mean, he got used sporadically throughout the campaign, but I didn't realize there was such a connection to the NPC, which I'm actually really happy of. I didn't want him to die, but that's how the dice fell, so it happened. It could have been Renee. Like, it was very close to being Renee. If he hadn't made his saving throw, he would have gone in the fire. So, again, the Underdark shows the party just how dangerous it is. So, that was the session. Pretty simple setup for terrain. A lot of stuff, got Dwarven Forge and some 3D printed stuff, and then some stuff I made myself. Just real quick, the fire giants. I got a bunch of these guys I painted up. I think they're on, might be a video of them on my channel. These are 3D prints. Really cool. They were kind of a pain to assemble, but once that got done, they were really fun to paint. And I finally get the chance to use them. I haven't used them yet. I've had them for years. And then I had some terrain set up in the back, but I never had to use it, which was great. So yeah, that's session 58. Session 59 is coming up in like a week or so. Like, we're trying to stick to this twice a month schedule, which is really great. But I appreciate you all watching, and I'll catch you at the next one.